So let's generate our motivation. Reflect on the shortcomings of the self-centered thought and how every single non-virtue we've created, all the negative karma that has thrown us into unfortunate rebirths and caused us to have problems in this life, that every single one of them was backed by, in one way or another, the self-centered thought. So the mind that thinks, I'm more important, my happiness is more important, and how that mind makes us or underlays whenever we create any of the 10 non-virtuous paths of action, or when we break our precepts. Because we never create non-virtue with the motivation to benefit others. It's always with the self-centered mind, intruding, mingling, rabble-rising. So see the faults of that self-centered mind and reflect that that mind is not you. It is not your inherent nature. It's not who you are. It's something laid on top that can be removed from the pure nature of your mind. So see that self-centered thought as the real troublemaker in your life, and knowing that you can remove it, make a strong determination, because you yourself want to be happy, and because you don't want to cause misery in this world, then make a strong determination to really abandon that self-centeredness. And instead, thinking of the kindness that other living beings have shown you and the benefits of cherishing them, then let that heart, that mind that wants to be of benefit to sentient beings, let that arise in yourself. And then based on that, generate the bodhicitta, the wish to become fully awakened, so that you can really repay the kindness of others in the most effective way, not only by helping them temporally, but leading them out of cyclic existence. How it's necessary to lead oneself first in order to lead others. Otherwise, it's the blind leading the blind. And so with this aspiration, we'll share the Dharma today. So I want to add some more onto the response to Rebecca's question yesterday about what we should focus on in our practice. Yeah. So one reason I emphasize really getting a good foundation in the three principal aspects is because with that, then everything you do after that comes easier. And if you have that good foundation, then you're able to keep your precepts. And I've seen people who, like I mentioned yesterday, one person really brilliant, translates, does this, that, and the other thing, but very disagreeable as a person. Something hasn't really gone in over the years. And then I remember somebody from a Dharma center who was in the staff of a Dharma center saying that there were some of the older, and younger monastics going there. And while they really welcomed them, these people complained a lot. And I thought, because the monastics are supposed to be good examples for people, but if the lay people just see them complaining a lot, then that's not helping establish the Sangha in the West. And that's one of our purposes here at the Abbey, because we see the existence of the Sangha, meaning the monastic Sangha, as something really crucial for the existence of the Dharma in a country. So that's why I think, we have to be really practical and work on the things that help us transform our mind, and work on the different weaknesses and faults that we have now and use the Dharma to overcome them. And in the process, then what we're doing is avoiding creating negativity, and we're creating virtue. Yeah, so that's purification and creation of merit, and that is what fertilizes and nourishes your mind, so that when you hear teachings, the teachings can go in and really affect you. So people here at the Abbey, some people have been practicing a long time, some people are relatively new to the Dharma, so people's practices are going to be different. Yeah, the people who are practicing a long time may have, different tantric commitments. They're ready to do some of the more involved practices. Yeah, but they still keep a very strong basis in the three principles and in the long rim. Because it says very clearly, for example, in the tantric teachings, that unless you have a good basis in the three principles, your tantric practice is not going to lead you anywhere. You're not going to get any realizations. And if you're thinking, well, how do I, do my commitments? And because basically when we're doing tantric things, especially with highest yoga tantra, we're putting seeds in our mind for future life's practice. Yeah. That's basically what we're doing, because that's an advanced practice. If we don't, have all the prerequisites, then, we're planting seeds by keeping our commitments and so on. And also, when you do those practices, it's very easy to put the Lam Rim right into them. Okay, because every practice we do starts out with refuge and bodhicitta. So, you said you're very inspired by, let's say, these teachings now on bodhicitta. When do I practice them? Well, if you have commitments, then you stop. And at the beginning, you do some meditation on the four immeasurables or on the bodhicitta, because it's right there in the sadhana. Okay. And same with refuge. 2 years ago, we talked about refuge and, what are the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha? And so taking time at the beginning of your, some of your daily practices, if you have commitments, to really reflect on, what are the three jewels and how do they lead me and what is my relationship to them? Yeah. And then, of course, there's the meditation on emptiness. Yeah, that's right there, in the practice. So there's some chance to practice that. There's some chance to practice concentration when you're visualizing either the objects of refuge, or if you're doing the meditation on the Buddha, stop and practice some serenity for a few minutes at the beginning of your practice. So I think what gets us confused often is we hear a teaching like you mentioned, and it's like, okay, I want to do only that, and then next week you hear another one. Oh, I want to go deep into that. And then you realize you can't go deep into everything all at the same time. And I think that's what gets us sometimes confused. And so if you do a little bit of, applying the various teachings that you've heard, and you do a little bit of that every day, you're making a habit of those things, and gradually you build upon them, because they always say that it's more advantageous to have a continual practice of something, even though what you're doing is just a little bit, than to practice 6 hours one day and then go a whole week before you sit on the cushion again. Okay? So if you're building things up and maintaining them day by day, then they really have a chance to transform you. Whereas if you do, many hours of meditation one day and then you don't go to your cushion for a week or 2 weeks, you've lost what you've developed, okay? Because you're not keeping the familiarity there. What else? So I think it's very important, especially the people who are monastics. My wish is for all of you to keep your ordinations your entire life. And I think to do that, you have to really practice. It's not that you take the ordination and then you go and do a bunch of other things, but you have to really practice to transform your mind in order to keep your ordination. When I was living in Europe, there was, the senior monk there, who everybody respected, and he practiced well, or seemed to anyway. wound up disrobing and getting married. So something in what he was doing in his practice, I think he was emphasizing a lot what was, in the tantric practice, some of the things, and so not, his feet weren't completely on the ground, so he got bowled over, and so. I feel very strongly that ordination is such a wonderful basis for your practice that you don't want to lose that if you've taken it. Yeah. And so it's important to really observe your mind and work on the afflictions hands-on. Yeah, because that's what real Dharma practice is. And I think, my saying all this, I was thinking about it, since yesterday. This is a result of how I was trained. Yeah, my very first Dharma courses were, they weren't about Tantra. They weren't about Dzogchen and Mahamudra. My teacher, just the 8 worldly concerns, again. And again, the evil thought of the 8 worldly concerns and being attached to only the happiness of this life. Again and again and again, as we're sitting there in the tent, with the fleas crawling over us. And it's cold outside and, forget hot showers, but over and over again hearing that. And then also the last 2 weeks of the course, we would take precepts every day, and how he would give a motivation and then have us kneel down, and then he'd keep talking with the motivation, and the motivation was always the faults of samsara, the suffering of samsara, the disadvantages of samsara, again and again. When you're sitting there crouching at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning and it's cold and your knees hurt and everything hurts because you're crouching and you can't move because he hasn't given the precepts yet, and he's talking about the suffering of samsara and you're going, yeah, and this is like no suffering compared to what he's talking about, being born in different realms of existence and so on. But it got so hammered into us every single morning, the suffering of samsara, the importance of getting out of samsara, the importance of helping other living beings get out of samsara. And so I've watched over the years how my teachers has changed because he's talking to different groups of people now. So what he teaches and emphasizes has changed. But some years ago, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to talk to him privately, and I just thanked him so much for hammering into us about the 8 worldly concerns and the suffering of samsara and the kindness of sentient beings. And I said, because these are not the teachings that people usually want to hear. Yeah, they want to hear, fancy stuff. And I said, thank you so much, because that really helped me at the beginning of my practice to, have my feet on the ground, I think. So how I'm instructing you is coming from how, my beginning days. Okay. Yeah. Because you really see that what you learn at the beginning makes a strong imprint.
How did your instructors' methods change over time for different groups? How did they change?
I think they started giving more tantric initiations, highest class tantra. At the very beginning, some people would ask them for that, and they would just laugh. My generation, they just laughed. You want that? Ha ha ha. you have no background. But then later they started giving those more to people earlier on. And then one of my teachers began really emphasizing holy objects a lot. And I think that's because so many people were coming for teachings, and the people didn't have the karma to hear, the deeper teachings on the nature of samsara, on the nature of reality. These people needed to create a lot of merit. And so he guided them on how to create a lot of merit by, doing all these things with holy objects. And then, they also sent other teachers to teach us. So, so we got other teachings as well, which I really cherish very much, because all the teachers that my teachers referred me to go to were all excellent teachers and are still my teachers now. I mean, all of these people, they're still my teachers. Many of them have passed away, but they all just guide you in the same way, and and you see in them the examples of people who are practicing what they're teaching you. Yeah, and I think that's important. At least it was for me. And also, what's different now than my generation is now there's a lot of Dharma books in English. When I started, there was hardly anything. There was Lobsang Rampa, the Irish plumber who pretended to be a Tibetan yogi and wrote up all these fantasy stories that nobody knew were fantasy stories at the time. There was Alexandra Devan Neil, who similarly wrote about, all these far out things in Tibet. There was Anagarika Govinda, who was a little bit, more on the earth. And that was basically about it, and anything in the Tibetan tradition when I started. And then my teacher had this book that they put together on mimeograph paper that was the first effort at translating some of the things. It was called The Wish-Fulfilling Golden Sun. And the vocabulary in it, because they would look up words in the dictionary and they didn't know the nuances between the English words. So you got sometimes these very strange translations, like wrong views was heresy. It's like they're telling me I'm a heretic if I don't believe what they say. No, that's not what they're saying. He was just in the process of learning English, and he looked it up in the Chandradas dictionary, and he chose one of the words there. So that got changed, as people started learning how to translate better. But what in my generation, we had very few books, and so our source of the Dharma was the oral teachings. And so when we studied, we took notes, or at least I did, an old habit of mine. And then you go over your notes and you meditate on your notes. It's not that you go to class, take a few notes, put it down, and then when you want to study, we read books about other topics. Yeah, there were no books to read about other topics, and what our teachers were teaching us was what we needed to learn, the basic foundation of the path. And so that's what we studied. And I think the power of the oral transmission that you get and hearing teachings live from a human being, is much more powerful at least for me, than reading a book at the beginning. Now I can read books and they fill in the holes of the oral teachings. Yeah. But, I just, whatever I heard, I went back and I studied and I meditated on that. Okay. And then slowly, you build up a practice doing that.
It's the guided meditation on the stage of the path built primarily from the notes of those oral teachings?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And later they started translating the books, but even the early books we got were transcripts of oral teachings. Yeah, because translating, there weren't very many people who could really do written translation, because oral and written Tibetan are quite different. Yeah. And so that also had its challenges, because when somebody's translating orally, there's a bigger chance that there's going to be mistakes than if in a written teaching where they have more time and hopefully they've gone through and corrected things.
It's amazing for me to hear how you learn the Dharma and how different that experience is from my experience. Mm-hmm. I mean, I read books. That's how I learned about it. And, I took a university class and I read all different kinds of traditions. And I guess only recently did I come to have a teacher. And just to think how that person-to-person contact would make a difference. And I mean, when you first start, you don't have the wisdom to know what you need to hear. And so you can go down all sorts of crazy wrong paths and around and around. And because that's how we've learned our whole life, we think that we're doing a good thing. We're critically analyzing and making informed decisions. But it's just such a different experience all around. And yeah. I mean, I think the Dharma has not quite been learned in this way in the past, just because the explosion of information that we have nowadays. And it can be very difficult. Maybe I should speak for myself. It was difficult coming to the path to know how to focus.
Yeah.
And to give up my autonomy in terms of, I know what teachings I need to hear.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I was, when I came, I didn't know anything. So it wasn't a question of giving up my autonomy, that I didn't know anything. I had to learn something, And what I heard from these teachers, oh, hello, one of our mothers here, what I learned from my teachers made sense to me. And so that's why I kept on with them. And I didn't know that there were many Buddhist traditions, and within Tibetan Buddhism, many traditions. And I didn't know any of this. All I knew was that what these people taught made sense, and when I practiced it, it helped. Yeah? And so I never had the thing of trying all the different flavors, and is this better, is that better, well, should I do this, maybe that, And I never learned from university professors who, thank goodness there's some university professors who practice, like Jeffrey, But then some of the other ones, you read what they write and this is very different than what my teachers who practice say. So, I always relied on the practice tradition, not just on academics who didn't really necessarily even believe what they were teaching. Yeah, so that made a big difference too. Yeah. So all these things, I mean, however you learn, you're learning, and that's good. Yeah. And you find your way according to the kind of prayers and dedications you made in previous lives. And then you work it all out somehow, don't you? You look and it's like, okay, there's all this stuff and I have to shed that. And then I have to, adopt this, because people come in from all different religious backgrounds. Some people were very religious in another tradition before they came. Some people had no tradition, no religious upbringing, or very little, So we all go through some process of unlearning things that don't serve us anymore and learning new things that benefit us. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it is different. I mean, it's different just sitting in a place that's warm and clean and yeah. Huh?
Shall we bring in some fleas?
Yeah, right. Yeah, that'll feel right at home, and because we had mats on the floor and no walls. It was all mats for the walls because the building was constructed like just every year they put it up before the course, so it was a temporary building. And then it got colder and colder, because the course started beginning of November and got colder. And yeah, the fleas got more plentiful. Yeah. Okay, so let's go back here. Where did our friend go? Oh, there. There. Okay, so Bodhisattva training in the perfections. So you may have noticed that for many years I translated this as far-reaching attitudes. So that was relying mostly on the Tibetan, where it's Paro Du Chin, which means to go beyond. So far-reaching, yeah. But then my editor at Wisdom pointed out to me, because he liked perfections, that etymologically perfections came from the Sanskrit. Yeah. So if you use the Sanskrit and translate directly, far-reaching attitudes. Or far-reaching practices, that's not incorrect, but perfections is also correct etymologically. And so I decided to go back to that because people were used to that. Okay, so the perfections. So it's parami in Pali and paramita in Sanskrit. Are the method to attain awakening ourselves, and the 4 ways of gathering disciples are the method to lead others on the path to awakening. The Sanskrit tradition enumerates 10 perfections: generosity, ethical conduct, fortitude, joyous effort, meditative stability, wisdom, skillful means, unshakable resolve, power, and exalted wisdom, or pristine wisdom. The last 4 are refined aspects of wisdom, which is the 6th, making 6 perfections. So you can consolidate the 10 into 6. But I've always wondered about that. It's never made a whole lot of sense to me. Yeah. So I hear that, but yeah. In the Pali tradition, the 10 are, and so there's some overlap, but there's also some difference: generosity, ethical conduct, renunciation, wisdom, joyous effort, fortitude, truthfulness, determination, love and compassion, and equanimity. So there's overlap. There's also a difference in the order, in the sequence. Okay? What's interesting is when you really learn the 10 in both traditions, you see that the major points are also found in the other tradition. Okay? So it's not that something's being left out. Parami and paramita mean going beyond the end, or reaching perfection. When done with the bodhicitta motivation, these practices take us beyond samsara to Buddhahood, where all obscurations have been eliminated and all good qualities have been developed limitlessly. So these two things, obscurations being eliminated, good qualities being developed limitlessly, that is a short way to understand what Buddhahood is. Okay? As you study, you find out that they often talk about abandonments and realizations. Yeah, that's another thing that is emphasized on the path. What is abandoned? What you realize. So that corresponds with, the thing here of what did I just say? Eliminating obscurations and generating good qualities. And then you also hear another duad, what to practice and what to abandon on the path. So all those three are all very related, and kind of come down to the same point. So the perfections become supramundane, meaning that they've gone beyond samsara, that they're not a regular, ordinary samsaric practice. When conjoined with the wisdom realizing emptiness, the bodhisattva knows the agent, object, and action of each perfection arise dependently and are therefore empty of inherent existence. Okay. So actually, from the Sanskrit viewpoint, in order to be perfections, they have to be done with the bodhicitta motivation. Yeah, because many of these practices are done even before somebody may cultivate bodhicitta. I mean, everybody in every tradition, and even they don't have any tradition, practices generosity and ethical conduct. Yeah, and people do some meditation and fortitude and so on. And, concentration is a practice common with non-Buddhists. And wisdom is something that even the people on the hare and solitary realizer paths practice. Yeah, so all these things are practices shared with other practitioners, but they don't become perfection, the perfection of generosity, the perfection of ethical conduct, until they're done with the bodhicitta motivation. And they don't become the supramundane perfections unless you do them with the some understanding of emptiness. So the Sanskrit tradition. Having generated bodhicitta, we need to accumulate all the appropriate causes and conditions for full awakening. These are subsumed in the two collections of merit and wisdom. The collection of merit ripens the mind, makes it more receptive, and is the principal cause for a Buddhist form body. The collection of wisdom eradicates defilements and is the principal cause of a Buddha's dharmakaya. The two collections encompass the perfections. Okay. In the prayer that we say after lunch.
Due to this virtue, may all beings complete the collections of merit and wisdom. May they attain the true Buddha bodies resulting from merit and wisdom.
Yeah. Okay. Good. So that verse is talking about this. Kind of if we complete the collection of merit and the collection of wisdom, the collection of merit, which is the method aspect of the path, is the principal, but not the only, the principal cause for the Buddha's form body, and the collection of wisdom is the principal cause for a Buddha's truth body, dharmakaya, or Buddha's mind. Okay? So the basis, the person who engages in the perfections, is those who have awakened their bodhisattva disposition by generating bodhicitta. They rely on a qualified spiritual mentor and receive extensive teachings on the texts about the perfections. Not satisfied with intellectual knowledge, they reflect and meditate on these teachings and practice the perfections at every opportunity they have. Okay? So that is personal instruction. We should all take that as personal instruction. Regarding the nature of each perfection, generosity includes physical, verbal, and mental actions based on a kind intention and the willingness to give. Yeah? So that's the nature of generosity. Ethical conduct is restraint from non-virtue. It's abandoning harmful acts towards others. Fortitude is the ability to remain calm and undisturbed in the face of harm from others, physical or mental suffering, and difficulties in learning the Dharma. That's what fortitude is. Joyous effort is delight in virtue and in increasing the causes to attain the Dharmakaya and the form bodies of a Buddha. So notice, it doesn't say joyous effort is pushing yourself, criticizing yourself to get yourself to practice until you're entirely exhausted. That's not what is written in the book. Okay? So let's listen to this again. Joyous effort is delight in virtue and in creating the causes, delight in creating the causes to attain the Dharmakaya and the form bodies of a Buddha. Meditative stability is the ability to remain fixed on a virtuous object without distraction. Wisdom is the ability to distinguish and deeply understand conventional and ultimate truths, and to discern what to practice and what to abandon on the path. Okay, so wisdom is not just the wisdom understanding emptiness, it's the wisdom that understands karma and its effects and how things function on a conventional level as well. And it also includes what they have, we'll come to this, but learning that what they call the 5 sciences, which include grammar and poetry. This is ancient India, yeah. So it's not just Dharma wisdom, it's, being an educated person. Yeah.
Getting to number 5, I had a flash. It's so easy to remain on a non-virtuous object. It's just so easy. It's way harder to do it on a virtuous.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why we do a lot of purification and creation of merit. Yeah. Because it's so easy to remain on a non-virtuous object. Yeah. Effortlessly. Yeah. So this is why, the purification is an important part. And a sense of humor. We need a sense of humor with this, okay? If we just look at our non-virtue and we just feel guilty and ashamed and then that doesn't work at all. So we have to be able to laugh at ourselves. Okay. Each perfection accomplishes the welfare of other sentient beings in a specific way. Generosity alleviates poverty and provides others with the basic necessities of life and other things that they can enjoy. Okay. Ethical conduct eases others' fear and pain. Okay. How does ethical conduct, the one about generosity, I think is easy. How does ethical conduct ease others' fear and pain? Yeah, they feel safer around you. Okay, so they don't fear you and they aren't traumatized, by your actions. Fortitude bears others' inconsiderate or harmful behavior without retaliating and causing them pain. Okay, how un-American. To bear others' inconsiderate or harmful behavior without retaliating and causing them pain, oh, come on, then people will step all over us and the world will take advantage of it. They'll laugh at us, right? So we've got to stand up and show them who's the boss. And look where it's gotten us. Joyous effort helps others without laziness, resentment, or empathic distress. Meditative stability leads to the super knowledges, which give us the ability, if you're on the Bodhisattva path, to know other people's disposition, their karma, and be much more attuned to how to guide them. Wisdom teaches others so that they can generate wisdom, thus eliminating their doubts and leading them to awakening. Okay, so each perfection helps us, and it also helps others. Since fulfilling the collections of merit and wisdom takes a long time, we need to ensure that we have precious human lives in our future rebirths, so we will be able to continue practicing the path. So this is how each of the perfections is going to help us attain a precious human life, with not just because we want a precious human life because we're afraid of the unfortunate rebirths, but because we want the condition to be able to continue practicing the path, because our ultimate goal is full awakening, and that's going to take some time. Okay, so that's why in the Lam Rim, when they talk about the initial level practitioner who aspires for a good rebirth, in the Lam Rim they call it the path in common with the initial practitioner, and the middle one is the path in common with the middle practitioner. Okay, because people can practice just with that aspiration, and that makes them initial practitioners, or in the case for aspiring for liberation, middle practitioners. As the Lam Rim was written for people who want to follow the Bodhisattva path, but to do that, you have to do all these practices at the beginning and practice the paths in common with the initial and middle level beings. Okay? Then when you come to, when they teach bodhicitta, then it's just the path of the advanced practitioner. There's no in common with. Okay? Okay, so generosity ensures we have the mental resources needed to practice. So that's material resources needed to practice. Without the material resources, if we're very poor and suffering, very difficult to practice. Okay, ethical conduct is the principal cause of attaining a good rebirth. Yeah, so that's what's going to get us to have a human life rather than a lower form of life. Fortitude results in being attractive and having good companions who encourage our Dharma practice. Okay, when we practice, when it talks about being attractive, it isn't because you want to be Mr. or Miss America. Okay, it's because if you have an agreeable appearance, then people are attracted to you. It's easier if you want to help them. It's easier to make friends, and so on. And so that results in us being around people who encourage our Dharma practice. Yeah. And you can really see that. If people are angry all the time, their face, even now in this life, is very unattractive. Yeah. When you're angry, do you look great? Yeah. Somebody looks at you. Do you look beautiful at that moment? No. Okay. So you don't look good now, and then future lives, it manifests also. Joyous effort enables us to complete virtuous projects in future lives. Completing what we start out to do is important, unless we've made a big boo-boo somewhere at the beginning. But otherwise, if we start a virtuous project, we should do our best to complete it. Meditative stability leads to a stable, peaceful mind that can meditate without distraction. The wisdom correctly understanding karma and its effects enables us to know what to practice and what to abandon on the path, and thus to discern teachers imparting the correct path from charlatans. Okay, so that's also very important. If we cultivate wisdom now, then in future lives, we've created the cause to have wisdom, and thus to have a mind that can discern good teachers from charlatanandas. Okay. Engaging in each perfection and experiencing its results in future lives is important. Lacking even one of these results will limit our opportunity to progress on the bodhisattva path in future lives. Okay, so that's why when in the Lam Rim, when they talk about the causes of a precious human life, there's 3 of them. What's the first cause?
Pure ethical conduct.
Pure ethical conduct, because that's what gets us a human life, a birth in the upper realm. What's the second one?
6 perfections. Practicing them purely.
Practicing the 6 perfections. Why? Because we need all these qualities in our next rebirth in order to practice. And we can look in our own life now, and because we have these qualities, it really facilitates our practice. Whereas if we lack that, it creates, obstructions. And what's the third cause? Yeah, making sincere dedication prayers. Okay, so not just dedicating, may I win the lottery, may I be rich and famous, or even just dedicating for a good future life, but really dedicating for full awakening, because if we have a dedicate for that, then all the conditions necessary to attain that become covered in our dedication.
I'd just like to testify how important the paramitas were in my life when I came across them in the first place. Mm-hmm. I think nothing has affected my later life as much as learning about both the paramitas and the 12 links. So those are the 2 things that live with me every day and have had a formative effect on my life.
Yeah.
I'm sure that we all know lots of people who have all of these. I'm looking at the thing, what happens in the future when you have these qualities in past lives.
Mm-hmm.
So, we know people who must have been generous and must have had good ethical conduct and must have been very patient and had a lot of fortitude in past lives, and they've got these results.
Uh-huh.
But how do you push them back towards doing good things instead of crumbing up all of these good causes?
Yeah, that's because they lack the wisdom one. Yeah, because they lack the wisdom one. And, and so that's why I think that part of us that is attracted to the Dharma and wants to create virtue is a very important part of us that we really need to respect. We may not be ideal practitioners, but we have that regard for virtue, due to wisdom cultivated in previous lives. And so we're interested in the Dharma. We want to practice. And you can see when it said you miss even one of those, then it's hard to make use of all the other good qualities. Yeah. So how do you push somebody especially your mother?
No, not my mother this time.
Okay, your friends. Yeah, push them in that direction. With friends, I think it's you do it differently than with your parents. With friends, I think just how you live and how you make decisions, they'll see the difference in how you are now and how you were before, and they'll see that you're much happier now. Yeah, and you're much calmer and you don't fly off the handle as much. And that will impress them. Okay? And, sometimes at the beginning they may tease you, like, come on, you don't want to go smoke a joint? We always used to do that, What are you, about now? Come on, man. And then that gives you the opportunity to say, I really spent some time thinking about my relationship with intoxicants and the effect it had on my life. And I've really come to a conclusion that it hasn't been a good effect. Yeah, and they go. You say, yeah, I had a good time, but getting loaded. But at the end, it really didn't take me where I wanted to go. And then it makes them think. And then, sometimes you find yourself at parties. I'm not a party goer to start with, but some people go to parties, and then of course they want to give you something to drink, and you say, I'll take grape juice, and or I'll take water or orange juice or whatever. Right. We're in college. This is what you're supposed to do, is get loaded on Friday and Saturday night, isn't it? It's what everybody does. If it's not alcohol, it's dope, it's something else. And then, and then you're, asking for orange juice or grape juice. Your friends are like, what happened to you? And, and again, you just say, yeah, I just was reflecting on all the times when I got really loaded. And yeah, I might have laughed a lot with my friends and everything, but the next day I woke up and I felt horrible. And then I looked back on what I did when I was loaded, and I said and did so many things that were so embarrassing. Yeah. And I just decided, I don't want to do that anymore. Yeah, and you stand up for what you believe. I mean, if you have confidence, in what you believe and you say it, they may be shocked, but it has an effect. Yeah, and they may not change immediately, but slowly. Yeah, they may start thinking themselves. Okay, then how do you do Mom? The best thing for Mom, when you go home, take out the garbage. Okay? And wash the dishes and keep your room tidy. Make your bed.
On this point. The one thing she wants more than anything is for me to cut the grass, but I feel terrible killing all the anthills and the grass.
Oh, there's a lot of anthills there? Oh, okay.
I'm like,
yeah, so that one, can you cut the grass around the anthills? Yeah. But really with your parents, that, at least rake the leaves. Okay, if you can't cut the grass, rake the leaves. And your mom will see that, she'll notice the difference. Do your own laundry. Okay? I know I'm talking about revolutionary things. But this will have an effect on your mom. Okay? She'll go, wow, Buddhism's great. Look at him now, He's learning to be responsible.
Spread.
Yeah, cook.
Wash the saran wrap. No, this should be a worry. We're talking about that. I can just open it.
Yeah, but at least wash the plastic bags and don't use the saran wrap. When she was first came to the Abbey, in one of our skits, they did a skit about about washing the
And
aluminum foil. Yeah.
And we carbon dated it.
When my sister came to the Abbey and saw this, Cheryl said to me, seeing the saran wrap, really? Really?
But I think it is better not to use the saran wrap if we can help it. Yeah. And same with aluminum foil. Sometimes you can't help it, but when you can. Okay, the 6 perfections can be included in the 3 higher trainings. Generosity, ethical conduct, and fortitude are included in the higher training of ethical conduct. Dhyana in the higher training of concentration. So dhyana, remember, is meditative stability. And wisdom is in the higher training of wisdom. So joyous effort is needed for all of them. So again, in the prayers that we do before lunch, in the prayer for the Sangha, how does that one go? Now it mentions the trainings. Okay, it doesn't. Having freed yourself, showing the path to freedom to well established in the trainings. Okay, build it out a good. Yeah, but well established in the trainings. So the trainings, there are the 3 higher trainings. And so those are common to the Pali tradition and the Sanskrit tradition. They were covered in the first part of the book. But here you see that the 6 perfections fit into the 3 higher trainings. So there's no discordance there. Yeah, so it's well established in the trainings, not training. Yeah. Now I can hear the S's if you say them. Yeah, hearing aids make the S's really strong. Yeah. All six perfections can be included in the practice of each one. For example, a small act of generosity, such as giving someone a cup of tea, can be done with bodhicitta, which is totally different than just here's your tea. Okay? Not harming others physically or verbally, which is ethical conduct. When giving the tea is ethical conduct. Yeah. If the recipient harms us or doesn't appreciate the gift, they say, I don't like this tea, or you spill it on them and they get mad. Fortitude keeps our mind calm. Oh, that reminds me, one time I was on a plane and they were serving alcohol to the person sitting next to me.
They spilled it on you.
Yes, not the whole thing, thank goodness, but okay, giving the tea is done with joyous effort, taking delight in being generous. Stability of mind is necessary so the mind maintains a bodhicitta motivation and is not polluted by afflictions while giving. Prior to giving, wisdom is needed to know what, when, and how to give, and while giving, contemplating the emptiness of the giver, gift, recipient, and act of giving cultivates wisdom. Okay, so these last few paragraphs, you could spend some time thinking about them, how all these things fit together. Okay, so especially this one about each perfection being included in the practice of the others. The example was with giving, with generosity. But take an example of another one, like take ethical conduct. Okay, so what would practicing ethical conduct with generosity, or how would you combine generosity with ethical conduct in your practice of ethical conduct? Doing it with delight would be the joyous effort of ethical conduct. Doing it with bodhicitta, or what I just told him to do.
Take out the garbage with joy.
Yeah. Or, the generosity by modeling ethical conduct. You're, doing it with a bodhicitta motivation. Okay, what would the fortitude of ethical conduct look like?
If somebody got angry with you, you would continue to stay calm and still act ethically.
Yeah. So if you tell somebody you're not going to do something because you want to keep your precepts, or just you don't even have to bring precepts in because it just doesn't feel right to you to do it, doesn't feel ethical, and they get mad at you, you're able to stay calm. That's the fortitude of generosity. Okay. Then the joyous effort of, the fortitude of ethical conduct. Then the joyous effort of ethical conduct is
delight in creating virtue, and not doing harmful things.
Yeah, delight in keeping your precepts and practicing virtue. Okay, what would be the concentration or the meditative stability, the dhyana of ethical conduct?
Not be distracted when you're acting ethically.
Yeah, not being distracted, maintaining your motivation. And what would the wisdom of ethical conduct be?
Understanding the results of your actions that they do. Karma functions with ethical conduct.
Yeah. And so deciding what you're going, understanding karma and keeping your ethical conduct because of that. And
the person who is keeping their ethical conduct and the ethical conduct itself, and the beings to whom we practice ethical conduct, are all empty of any kind of solid inherent existence.
Yeah. Okay. So it's good to think these through and, how you can combine the different ones. Fulfilling the perfections requires time, patience, practice, and patience. Instead of expecting to be experts, we can accept our present abilities and at the same time work to increase them in the future. The Buddha did not start off fully awakened, and there was a time when he found the perfections challenging. However, because causes bring their corresponding results, by steady practice, we can begin, develop, and complete all the bodhisattva practices.